Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the June meeting of the Audit and Risk Management Panel. And so I'm Councillor David Gardner, the Chair, and I've got Councillor Lade Olugbemi, our independent member Susan Blackall, Councillor Nick Williams, and our clerk Daniel Wilkinson. Please be advised this meeting is being recorded and it will be posted on the Council's YouTube channel to great acclaim, I'm sure. And can all those speaking ensure you switch on your microphone before addressing the meeting, and remember to switch it off when you've finished speaking. Moving to the agenda, we've had apologies for absence from Councillor Dave Sullivan and Councillor Matt Hartley. We are expecting Councillor Christine May. Moving to urgent business, I've not been informed of any urgent business. And then I need to ask members whether you have any declarations of interest on items on the agenda. I see none. If we can deal then with the minutes of our last meeting of the 19th of March, these have been circulated. Are members happy to agree the minutes of this meeting? Thank you. I'll sign those. I'm very happy to say we have an action log. I did have some difficulty reading it though, because it was printed rather small. So if you look after the minutes, you will see an action log, and that's going to be presented to us to unpack it, just in case we can't read it, especially the black and white version here, by Vivian Uzoechi. Vivian, do you want to come? Oh, yeah.
Well, apologies that it's quite tiny, and we'll try and make it more readable next time. So, in terms of the action log, we have successfully completed the bulk of the actions, and what we have presented now is a few of the actions from the last year that are carried over. A lot of the actions are in progress, and one is already completed. So we are still working with the relevant teams to get an update, and at the next meeting I think we should be able to close off the remaining actions.
Thank you. Can you just highlight the one that's got to be completed, Vivian?
Okay, the one completed action is around an audit that was undertaken last year. And one of the recommendations did say that it was not accepted by the service area, but that's actually an error. It was accepted by them and has been completed and implemented in full.
That's an internal audit review?
Yes, it is.
Thank you very much, Vivian. Are there any questions to Vivian on this log? Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Vivian. I just think 2 points of feedback more than anything, so partly for you as well, Chair. It would be good to have an estimated time for completion on here, I think, just to manage our expectations as well, because I'm not seeing that here. Also, Chair, I'm not sure if this would be the appropriate place, but I'm sure there were outstanding questions around some of the right-to-buy checks, because obviously there was a dip test done which revealed quite a high number, and there was to be perhaps further checks done or confirmation of that. I can't see anything in here about that.
Thank you, Vivian. Two important points there. Do you want to respond to those? Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question. In terms of estimated time it will take, we can add that column onto that. So I'll take that away, and then we'll do that for any actions in progress and not completed. In terms of the actions around the right to buy, that's an audit and the recommendations, and it will be followed up in the usual way that internal audit does. So I can also take that back, and maybe specifically on that particular audit, we could come back with a bit more information on where we are on those.
Councillor Obemi, question on this?
Yeah, I'm not too sure, but Councillor William, if you just clarify, line 5, item number 5 actually just mentioned about what the question around the statutory deadline to respond to right to buy application. Is that the question or something else?
That's part of it. The other was that obviously there was a concerning percentage that were potential fraud, so it was looking deeper, I think, was the challenge there. Thanks.
As I recall, we had quite a disturbing report based on quite a small sample of right to buy, of which quite a high proportion, about 20% from what I remember, were seen to be fraudulent. And the worry was that at that particular time, because of the change in the threshold of the discount, we had an avalanche of new right to buy applications. So the housing team and the right to buy team didn't have the bandwidth to put in new procedures and to tighten their procedures at that stage. So we wanted to come back to it just to make sure that we were tightening on the cases of fraud. Okay, well, thank you very much, Vivian, and thank you for the questions on that. I've had a request to change the agenda, which I'm happy to accede to if members are happy, to allow our external auditor to Tom Greensill to depart earlier and get back home or back to the office, whichever. Are members happy to take item 10 now? Thank you very much. So, Tom, we've got the audit strategy for the 24-25 financial year. Do you want to, which we've had laid before us, would you like to present that? Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Chair, and I appreciate you moving me forward a little bit. So I'll take the report as read, and I'll just pull out the key points in the report. So if we move to page 14 of Annex A, that considers materiality. So the materiality, I'm sure you're familiar, is the amount by which something could be misstated or omitted from the accounts before influencing the decisions of the user of the financial statements. The overall materiality benchmark that we've used is based on gross revenue expenditure, which is the focus of the user of the accounts. And this has been set at 1.9% this financial year, which is an increase of 1% on the previous year, but you'll see the figures are largely consistent. The performance materiality is a lower threshold which we use to ensure that we reduce the risk of missing a material misstatement, and anything above that threshold we would ask to be adjusted for. This has been raised by 5% from 60% to 65% this year, resulting in a £1 million increase on the performance materiality to 14.5 million. And that is largely because of the level of adjustments that we found in the previous year, which weren't relating to PPE. So we know we can focus on that, and we use a risk-based approach to selecting those samples. So we'll have appropriate coverage. So we think that that's a reasonable level for that to be set at, and also because there weren't a large number of control findings. We also report anything to this committee which is above the trivial threshold, which is at 3% of the overall materiality, which is 635k. If we turn then to page 17, which is the significant risk section, the first one of which is the management override of controls, which is a mandatory significant risk at all entities, and that is because of the position of management in an organisation and the unique opportunities that they would have to manipulate accounting records or perpetrate fraud because of override of those controls. So we'll look at the accounting estimates in the financial statements and look for evidence of management bias. We'll test a sample of journals, and we'll also look at any significant transactions outside of the usual course of business. Overleaf is the valuation of PPE. So because this is such a large balance and the valuation of PPE is inherently complex, there's a lot of scope for material misstatement there, for things to go wrong. And so what we will do is we'll review the valuers' qualifications, the method and the approach that they take and the assumptions, and also look at their objectivity. And where we need to, we'll engage our Forvis Mazar real estate valuation team as well to help us provide challenge to those. On page 19 is the valuation of the net defined benefit liability. Again, it's a very material balance on the balance sheet, particularly the gross assets and gross liabilities. And because that relies on a number of financial assumptions and demographic assumptions, things can easily go wrong there. So we consider that's a significant risk. Again, we'll look at the skill and the competence of the council's actuary, and we'll challenge the reasonableness of the assumptions that are used. We'll carry out a range of procedures there, and we will challenge the overall valuation, which management have in the financial statements. We'll also make sure that the accounting entries are correct and that all of the data is complete. There's a new significant risk for this financial year, which is around the IFRS 16 implementation, which is the new leasing standard that replaces IAS 17. So this has come in the NHS and corporate already, but what it aims to do is to make leases more understandable for the reader in terms of the timing and the amount of cash flows. And so for the lessee, any distinction between finance lease and operating lease will be removed. The assets will be recognised as a right of use asset on the balance sheet, and then the liability will be remeasured. And so we'll carry out a work to assess the council's readiness for that transition, and we'll test a sample of leases to ensure that they're being reported appropriately under IFRS 16, and that the accounting treatment is correct in the financial statements. And we'll also have a look at the PFI leases as well to make sure they're being treated appropriately. Moving on then, I just wanted to touch on VFM before I present the pension fund report. So with VFM, we'll be following up on the recommendations we made in relation to the two significant weaknesses found in the previous year. So this is at page 24 and 25. The first of which was the financial sustainability risk, which we found, and we'll be looking to make sure that there's been progress against the recommendations in the previous year, which was that savings targets should be realistic, and appropriate arrangements are in place to track their delivery, and also the need for the council to reduce spend and reliance on one-off resources and reserves. And the other one is around the regulator for social housing and making sure that progress has been made against the 6 criteria, namely the fire criteria was concerning in the prior year, and then also to see whether any action has been made towards the contractor. I'll pause there for any questions before I quickly move on to pension fund.
Thank you, Tom. I have 1 or 2 questions, but open to other members? No? Tom, I was firstly going to ask on IFRS 16, which is the new standard for leases, of which the council seems to have £63 million worth. So I wondered, did we have to produce a draft of, in the last financial year for IFRS 16 of what leases would have been under IFRS 16 to prepare ourselves for it? And has your team been working with our team to look at this to ensure we get it right, so it doesn't need to be corrected at the audit?
So in the prior financial audit, the work, there is a readiness assessment which could have been undertaken, but at that point it wasn't completed yet sufficiently for us to have a look at. So during the planning stages of the audit, we inquired with the finance team here to see whether or not that readiness assessment had been undertaken. And then we were provided with the emails which were being sent round to make sure that the listings had been made, so they've got comfort over the completeness of the listings, which were being put together. And also we were made aware of the review of the contracts that the council currently has to make sure that any embedded leases are captured in that. We weren't able to complete the work at that point because it was still ongoing, so we're looking to be able to carry that work out probably as a priority at the beginning of the audit.
And could I just ask, in terms of the timetable, that you've got 6 months worth of field work, which is a very long time, and I appreciate the capacity constraints, but given that we will be going back to hopefully a end of July finalisation of audit within a few years, what steps have you got in place to try and speed that up? And is there any prospect of being able to do it quicker this year so we can have actually... I know that February is a statutory limit for the completion of the publication of the audit, the issuing of the audit opinion, but ideally we would obviously like it earlier. Otherwise we're into the budget, we're already into, by the autumn, obviously we're already thinking about the budget for the next year. And it's always helpful to have the audit completed before we start the budget process for the following year.
Yeah, I can understand that concern. I think in terms of moving timelines forward, next year will be moved back to November. We were looking to not be overly optimistic in the production of this report, so we're aiming to have everything, this substantive work done by December, with reporting and finalisation up to January, so that will move things forwards by 2 months. In terms of the long running of the audit, it's a change in the team structure at the moment in Forvis Mazar, London, and that's in order that we can service the other audits across the London boroughs, which need to have the assurance rebuilt. So there'll be extra work, which we should be getting guidance about imminently. But because we need to rebuild the assurance and carry out those audits at the same time so that all of our boroughs meet the deadline, we've slimmed the teams down, so they'll be working in sprints to take some of the pressure off the finance team, meaning that the whole finance team won't be engaged at the same time. So hopefully that should reduce some of the pressures on people carrying out budgeting exercises. In terms of bringing things back to July, I think at the moment the plans are September over the coming few years, so I don't know whether or not that's been confirmed yet, but I'd have to come back to you.
Thank you. And are all the appointed auditors under the PSAA, are they all in the same boat using this time frame, or have we drawn the short straw with Forvis Mavars?
So that depends on the situation that the other auditors are in. I think in terms of their councils and what they were able to deliver, I wouldn't say that you've drawn the short straw with Forvis Mazars. I think some other firms are in situations where they haven't even agreed what type of work they'd need to do to carry out the rebuilding. So whilst we haven't been given the instruction yet, we have a good idea of what needs to be done. And so a plan has been put in place. I think in terms of getting the audits across the line and rebuilding assurance in line with the guidance that we're receiving from central government, I think that's the best plan in order to rebuild assurance and get back onto a timetable for the whole system rather than just for Greenwich, because if we prioritise this and didn't get the other audits done as well, then the problems with resourcing would persist in the long term.
I mean, thank you. I could pursue that further, but time presses. And I just wanted to ask about materiality. That obviously you've followed a formula of between, I think, 1.5 and 2% for the gross and the performance materiality. But obviously that's on our gross revenues, which is 1.1, 1.2 billion or whatever. Whereas obviously our sort of budget is much less than that, and not including schools and so forth, and housing and things, and 22 million pounds is some 20% of council tax, 20p. Yeah. It's equivalent to a 20% increase in council tax. So what is material in terms of the audit is obviously, what might not be material in terms of the audit is obviously very material in terms of council taxpayers. But I presume that most of these judgments are going to be around valuations. So that wouldn't affect the revenue position.
I think there's probably a couple of questions in there. So I agree on the valuations where if something is misstated there, it wouldn't have an impact on the general fund, and therefore it's probably of less interest to the council taxpayers. It's a significant risk that we have to consider as part of our work because of the financial reporting standards that we follow. In terms of actually reporting errors, if we were to find them, which would affect the general fund in the financial statements, we report those above the trivial threshold. So were it to get near to the 13.5 million of performance materiality, we would ask for things to be corrected. And if we were to find consistent errors and mistakes in those balances, then we would raise control recommendations to the audit committee that these be implemented in order to reduce those. Historically, we didn't find them in the prior year, so that's not such a concern to us this year. But above the 600k, we will be reporting any issues. So it's not that those errors will be missed.
Thank you very much, Tom. Councillor Olubemi, you had a question.
Yes, I was just going to ask about if there are any trends of emerging risks that you observed through the report.
Is that emerging risks from this audit in the prior year, or is it? Okay. I don't think there are any emerging risks in terms of trend. I think there were a number of valuation misstatements, but I think because of the complexity in those, that can happen relatively easily. It wasn't to a level of material misstatement in the prior year, and again, that probably wouldn't affect the user's decisions in terms of the council taxpayers. If there is anything which does come up and there are any control recommendations that we need to make, we will bring them to committee. But no, there isn't anything that we're concerned about.
Furthermore, how confident are you of the control methods that you have in place?
In terms of quality control of the audit? Yeah, I think we're pretty confident in terms of the quality control. I can share with the committee the latest scores that we've had when we've been reviewed, if that would help. Yeah, let me make a note to do that.
That would be excellent. I mean, I'm sure they're publicly available, aren't they? Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Tom. I think I just had one final question. In terms of your the significant risks you outlined, are they bespoke for all your local authorities in London, or are they generic, or are they bespoke, those significant risks for Greenwich? Are they tweaked at all or are they the same for every borough?
They're not the same for every borough, but you're right, there are consistencies across local government, and that is because of the nature of the accounts and which balances tend to be largest and with more inherent uncertainty and estimation uncertainty. So things do often crop up which are the same. In terms of this borough, they are quite similar to my other bond that I am auditing. But that is, if there was another significant risk that was particular to the council, we would include it. So we do have some other clients where, for example, they have a building society which immediately rings alarm bells, and that would be a significant risk. So we don't just blindly apply them to all of our audits. We do get an understanding of the entities first.
No further questions? No? Well, thank you very much indeed, Tom. And please pass on our best wishes to... Oh, sorry. Yep, thank you. Daniel reminds me we've still got to do the pension fund.
That's true. This one will be a bit quicker. So In terms of the pension fund, the overall materiality is set at 16.9 million, in line with the prior year until we get the new draft financial statements, at which point we'll reassess those. And that is based on 1% of net assets, which is the most important thing for the user of the financial statement in this case. The performance materiality is 13.525%, which is set at 80% of those net assets. And then our trivial threshold is 508k. If you move to page 17 of the annex, again, we have management override of controls, which I won't explain again, as it's the same for the council, but there will be a different set of risk criteria used in selecting those journals. And then the other significant risk we've identified is the valuation of investments within level 3 of the fair value hierarchy, which are those investments where at least one of the inputs is unobservable, and therefore there's a judgment which is included in the valuation there. And so we'll address those risks by looking at the holdings from the fund manager reports and agree those to the global custodian reports. We'll agree the valuations to any supporting documentation that's available, including investment manager statements and cash flows for any adjustments made to those valuations. And where there are audited accounts, we will agree that the information to those accounts and any supporting documentation, taking into consideration the opinions there.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Williams.
Just a really simple one. Thank you, Tom. On your proposed fees, is there a reason? What's the reason for the increase? I suppose of around 10% there.
Is that both sets of fees, or is that the council?
Just on the pension fund.
On the pension
just
fund.
Focusing on that, but equally for the other, I guess.
Yeah. So on the pension fund, that's the PSAA contract, which dictates what the scale fee is. So you'll see that the additional work relating to the changes on ISA 315 and 240 have dropped out in this financial year, and so that 7840 has been included now in the scale fee, so there won't be any surprises going forwards relating to those. And then there's a small inflationary uplift, which is calculated with a formula that's available on the PSAA website.
Thank you. Are members then happy to note the report from the external auditor? So can we thank you, Tom, for your time, and obviously pass on our best wishes to the audit partner, Suresh Patel. Thank you. You're free to leave or free to stay if you wish. So if we can move back on the agenda. Item 6 is the Audit and Risk Management Panel Draft Work Programme, which is for all of us for the forthcoming for this municipal year. And that's going to be presented by Vivian.
The report presents the panel's terms of reference and draft work programme. Panel may remember an updated draft terms of reference was presented at the meeting in June last year. That updated version is going through to council for consideration next week. The work programme itself for this year for the panel is presented in the usual way in draft format to ensure flexibility if more items need to be added or moved around. And yeah, that's this report, and happy to take any questions on that.
Thank you, Vivian. Are there questions from members on the work programme? Councillor Williams.
Just some feedback, really, for you and for Vivian, Chair. It's a tremendous way of presenting the work programme, I just want to say. So thank you. Very succinct and yet very informative. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Vivian. Are members happy to agree that work programme? note the report? Thank you. So item 7, I think you're up again, aren't you? Yeah. Internal audit and audit fraud performance from April 24 to March 25. So that's her last financial year. And over to you, Vivian. This is item 7.
Thank you, Chair. So 2024-25, for the world of internal audit, it was quite a hectic one, in the sense that every internal audit service or function had to juggle the usual planned delivery and preparing for the global internal audit standards, which came into effect on the 1st of April. For 2024-25, we performed under the public sector internal audit standards, but in the spirit of the global standards, which is now in place, we took a kind of step into adopting a more strategic and data-led approach for our communication and reporting our performance. The aim this year is to try and provide as much information and useful insights to panel and also to management and the council as a whole. So we would also welcome your comments on the approach and format that we've used. Appendix A of the report provides a detailed report on the internal audit function's performance, covering the audit work undertaken and the outcomes, the team's performance against agreed key performance indicators. Overall, the opinion is that there is a reasonable assurance that material risks were being identified and managed effectively. On the anti-fraud performance kind of area, in terms of referrals that we received, so for housing benefits, we had about 95 referrals in the year. Quite a number of those were referred to DWP as they deal with these cases. Around tenancies and subletting across the council, and that's looking at the fraud team, the work that is undertaken by a team in housing around tenancy recoveries. We recovered about 20 tenancies in the year. And for corporate-related frauds, 71% of those relate to blue badge misuse. And the rest of the cases that have been concluded, we've also presented in the report the outcome of those cases. And yeah, I'm happy to take questions on the report.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Vivian. Susan.
Yes, I'm just on the at point 4.8. Oh, sorry, 4.9, the table that breaks the breakdown of the client satisfaction scores. I wondered if you could give any insight. There's only one real outlier there, which is 3.6. Was there any particular reason why that was lower than the rest?
There is, but if I could take that back, because I need to look at the entire form to pick up the issue. So I'm happy to take that back and then feedback on what it is.
Thank you.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. On a similar vein, and I'm sure it is out of 5, but I don't want to be, but it doesn't say. So if we could just confirm, is that average score out of 5? Because if it's 10, I've probably got a lot more questions. And then just at the end in the appendix on page 58 in the pack, there are a number removed from plan due to changes in staffing resources, apart from on the one where the school closed, which is perfectly reasonable. So could you perhaps just elucidate on how you make the decision to remove from the plan, which ones, how you choose which ones fall, because whilst they're all important, you know, risk management within children's services, etc., why wouldn't do that? And the changes in staffing resources, is that within the audit team or within the department that is being audited, I suppose? Thank you.
Yeah, okay, the changes were reported and discussed at panel, I think, during Q2 reporting. In terms of how the decision is made, The internal audit team obviously would look at the risks around the departments, if there has been any changes across the council, if there are any changes in the resources available. From memory, I believe that the reason for these particular changes at the time were around the resources available for the internal audit team at that time. I think there were some minor changes in terms of the risk management, but it's mainly due to the resources available at the time. I believe it is out of 5, yes.
Yeah, that's what it is. So my question was similar, really. Under 4.8, there is it looks like red, but I've got a black and white thing, a red flag RAG status for the percentage of the internal audit plan delivered, 60.8%. So my questions on that is, A, how does that compare to previous years? And B, given the target was 90%, B, are you at full capacity in terms of the internal audit team? And if not, what steps are being taken to ensure we are at full capacity?
Okay, so taking the first question around the percentage of the plan delivered, it's quite similar to what was delivered in the previous year. So if you, I think this might throw some light on that. If you look at point 4.5, where we have a table comparing the assurance opinions between 2024 and 2023, the numbers are pretty much kind of similar. In terms of if the team is sufficiently resourced, I'd say that the team is doing the best it can within the resource available. We have tried a recruitment campaign, and the unfortunate reality is that it's very difficult to recruit. And that is a challenge that I think, I believe, and I know that other councils are also experiencing now. So the challenge for us is being able to deliver, as you know, the plan within the available resources that we have.
Just before I bring in Councillor Bemi from that, in terms of the, I mean, obviously, if we set a target of 90%, 60% may be similar to the previous year, but it still looks very low. And in terms of the capacity to complete these audits then, internal audits, then have we looked at the, you know, the payment? Have we looked at, obviously we're looking at productivity, I could see that in the report, but are we looking at whether we're paying the right rate to attract people, and are we also looking at training, you know, trainees, usually doing the SIP for internal audit qualification?
Yes, in terms of recruitment and payment, what we offer is around, if not better, than what most other local authorities offer as well. So it's a challenge that I think most sectors are also experiencing. So even with the fantastic payments, there just isn't that many people out there. In terms of training, yeah, that's one of the things that we are looking at and kind of putting a lot of effort into. We've got 2 apprentices at the moment who are studying and, you know, working with us, and we are, you know, investing in them as well. So, yeah, training is something that we've looked at. In terms of improving our performance as well, I'm kind of jumping the gun a bit. I know we're going to get to what we're doing for 2025 and 6. So we're looking at other ways that could help us in terms of our resources, how we can minimize time spent on doing admin work, for instance, and we could focus and channel that time into actually doing more audits. So we're looking at every possible thing we could do to help to drive that percentage up.
Councillor Bemi?
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering if you could throw more light into the implementation of the audit actions and how they're going to be tracked just to make sure that they've been implemented rightly. What plans do you have in tracking the?
We currently have a process in place where every audit recommendation is followed up by the internal audit team. For some recommendations, what the team does is we contact the department, so we have a kind of reminder diary system that tells us when they're due, and we'll contact the departments to check the process and follow it that way. Sometimes the recommendations, we actually carry out a full audit based on the recommendations, you know, to review the area to make sure the actions are all completed. So there is a process in place, and we continue to review that process, thinking about the resource challenge. So it's not just internal audits, I think every authority, every team. So we're kind of trying to balance, you know, all of that whilst we are, you know, balancing our resources and the challenge, and we're also looking at what others. So we continue to review the process for getting the recommendations completed.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. On 4.25, the outcomes for the 34 closed cases, do we know how that tends to benchmark against other fraud departments in local government there, like audit department, sorry, I should say? Are we satisfied that we've got one successful prosecution out of that for the work that's gone into it? Does it mean we're maybe not targeting correctly?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges with fraud cases is that every case is different, and the approach adopted by every authority is different. So it's quite challenging to kind of do a like-for-like benchmarking exercise. The other thing around the cases also, and the ones that we've closed, is the process. Sometimes quite a few of those cases are currently stuck in the court backlog. So they are there. The numbers could be higher, but I think everyone is in the same boat. If you see what I mean, like we're all kind of there where we're in court or something else. So I think it's pretty much similar. But what we are hoping to do moving forward is do a comparison between the years. So now we've got this position for 2024. We would compare what we've done in 2025 and then kind of deep dive into why is there a difference, or what can we do, you know, to improve the numbers.
Thank you again, Chair. And could you, and apologies if this has been said in previous panel meetings, but the partnership with Bromley, could you describe that? Is it us providing services to Bromley, or do Bromley have a team based in Bromley as well that we are in partnership with? If it is us providing services, do we have SLAs with them, and how are we tracking on that? Thank you.
So yes, we have an SLA in place with Bromley, and it's us providing the services to them.
And how are we tracking on the SLA? So we say we're continuing to do it, there's monitoring regularly in place, but it doesn't talk about the performance of the service, I suppose, in that description. So are we performant, I suppose, to the SLA that we have agreed with them?
Yes, there is a kind of process in place where we have meetings with them, and then we, you know, they look at the performance. But because it is their data and their work, so we wouldn't really cover it. Do you see what I mean? It's for them. And
I suppose, but we are providing a service, which I guess we should be proud of, and therefore, I guess, should there be, we see client satisfaction scores for other things like that. Bromley are a client in that sense, so how do we rate their satisfaction with us than the service that RBG provide?
okay, that will be considered as part of the regular monthly meetings, management meetings we have with them. But it's a good point, and we could take that back and see if we can actually get some feedback that we could bring back to panel.
Thanks. I know it's been a long-standing arrangement with Bromley, and I saw a Bromley councillor recently of a different party, because they're obviously controlled by a different party, and they were very full of appreciation of the internal audit service that Greenwich provide. So I think that's very positive. Are there any further questions on the 24-25 internal audit performance? So are we happy to note that report? Thank you. So we move on to then 25-26. And Vivian, I think over to you again.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So yeah, the 25-26 internal audit plan. So earlier I mentioned the global internal audit standards. Cover to cover, the document is 120 pages long. And if I were to summarize its overall aim in 3 words, the words will be enhance, support, and adapt. I think that's the main thing the standard is trying to do for the internal audit world. At the center of this is technology, analytics, and automation. So that's the forward-looking approach that the standard brings to internal audit. With that in mind, panel will see that we have an internal audit strategy. That's a new mandatory requirement under the standard. The strategy sets out our vision and key strategic objectives, and the achievement of these hinges upon completing some supporting initiatives or actions. The report also presents the 2025 internal audit plan. Earlier on, I mentioned the strategic and data-led approach. So we've, this year, linked our audits direct to the Strategic Risk Register and the Council's our Greenwich missions. And that summary is provided in Appendix C. We also aim to provide assurance against specific key governance areas, which are detailed in the report as well. And from a performance perspective, we will continue to review and report progress against our key KPIs. And yeah, I'm happy to take questions on the report.
Yeah, well, I've got an off-field question, which is in terms of our carbon neutral plan and the sustainability team, but also the contribution of the council overall to achieving that net zero 2030 goal. Is there any role for internal audit there? Is there anything in the GIS about reviewing progress towards net zero? I mean, obviously, I know there are external audit expertise in that area, but is there anything within internal audit that we can check and measure the work being done, both by the sustainability team, but more broadly across the council?
Yeah, so the GIS kind of gives a general approach, which is consider your risks and put together a risk-based audit. And what we do also is look at the key risks that the council has. Now, I think you could say that every area across the council is a risk potential auditable, but it's being able to balance that. So I take what you've said on board, and I think we'll go back and look at that as we review the risks that we are auditing. We would see where there's a role we could play and what that role is, and then we'll take that forward.
Thanks, because while obviously if you look at the scorecard that came out this week, we've advanced 15 points in this sort of balanced scorecard on our readiness for climate change and our contribution. We're still not at the top, as it were, and we're still off meeting that 2030 target. So I do think it's something we need to look at, and whether internal audit is a tool to assist with that within the framework. That would be helpful to look at that. Are there any other questions from members on the 25-26? Councillor Williams.
I think on a similar vein to what Councillor Gardner was discussing, last year we launched an innovative financial product, the Green Bond, I think it's known as. I don't really, and apologies if I missed it, but see a reference to that. So I wonder if there was any consideration to something new like that and how we might validate things, particularly as it's the public's money going into that choose to invest. Secondly, I do see mention of implementation of contract standing orders being deferred as well to 24, or deferred from 24-25, so good to see that on there. I personally have some concerns around CSOs, being a previous chair of the Finance and Corporate Finance Performance Scrutiny Panel. And yeah, so when are they to be reviewed, and when do you see, I mean, indicative time in Q4 this year, so that's good, but I'm guessing they still haven't changed significantly and are still very department siloed, where the exceptions are, I think, with some of the previous challenges. I may be going into too much detail here from the other one, but yeah, but if talk about what that means, the implementation of contract standing orders, is that the execution of the revised plans where it's more centralised?
Okay, we will, obviously, when we get to look at the detailed scope of that audit, and I've taken what you've said on board, and we'll take it back, and when we look at the scope, we get to auditing, we would see what we could do, and of course, we'll report back. I'll take that one back as well.
Councillor Olubemi.
Yeah, I just got to ask this question in the light of the various cyber attacks and cyber security issues that's ongoing at the moment, and we know that it's very rapid and it's quite rampant. What are the risk measures? What are the strategic measures that we have put in place for 2025-26 towards cyber crime, cyber attacks, procurement, and also financial resilience, but particularly around cyber attacks for me?
Yes, you are right around cyber risk. It's clearly a risk, and I was in a meeting a few days ago with the insurers, and that was one of the things that was also on their agenda. So it's definitely a risk that everyone is talking about in light of activities. It's one of the areas that we have obviously considered and continue to consider as part of the risk-based audit plan. We look at the strategic risk registers. So in terms of managing that risk, that would sit with our, it's within resources department, but the digital team. So they would oversee and put in place the relevant policies and strategic actions to protect the council. We would, obviously, we keep reviewing the risk areas that we're auditing, but it's noted, you know, the recent, you know, talk around it. And when we review the plan, we'll keep looking at it to see if that risk is significant enough to bump up or add to the plan as well.
Could I, oh, you follow through first and then I'll come in.
Yeah, if I may just say, I don't know at which point, it would be great for us to look at our capacity. It would be great to look at how, when I say we, I mean as in for us to have a presentation from either the IT team about how we are preparing to counter the various potential risks that are out there. It is very severe. When you think of what's happened to Marks and Spencer, Hackney, for over 6 weeks, they were down. They couldn't do anything. I know we're quite robust in-house, but however, and I see the various, you know, the various quality check and quality control they do internally, but however, it would be great to hear from the team.
So I can see on, thank you, on page 81, there is a reference to cybersecurity and data breaches and the rating in terms of the risk review. And I know in the other audit committees I'm on, this has been the main topic of conversation. So it would just be useful to highlight, but I couldn't see, so it's on that risk chart, but I couldn't see an actual internal audit review of cybersecurity, which I know in the other organisations I'm involved in, which public sector, they are doing reviews. TfL had a, you mentioned Hackney, and obviously we know about the retail stores as well, but TfL had a very significant cyber attack which affected all sorts of operations, and there was significant revenue loss as well as reputational loss to TfL as a result. You know, clearly local authorities are not immune from it. So I just wonder if that is an area for internal audit review or whether we've done one very recently. I know in another organisation I'm on the audit committee of, that they have increased that have a very good sort of cycle of reviews that come around. They have a 5-year programme, so they have a cycle, and some things are reviewed every 5 years, some every 3 years, but they've increased the frequency of reviews of cybersecurity preparedness. And just wondered what our approach is there when we last did a review, what the frequency is, and whether there's any value in increasing that frequency, given clearly the increased risk.
Yeah, most definitely. What I don't have to hand is exactly when that area was last reviewed, or the frequency, and I could always go back and then we look at our information and get that. And yeah, we continue to look at the risks. So at the moment, the Council has cybersecurity and data breaches as one of its strategic risks, and is actually a medium. The assessment is medium, is amber. And I know from the last strategic risk register reports that there were quite a number of actions that the team were undertaking, and they were completed at that time. So we are also reviewing the strategic risk register. So the team are going to go through the whole risk assessment process again in July next month. And based on that assessment, now if their assessment identifies more actions to undertake, or maybe that the risk has increased, then definitely that's a trigger for audit to also review the risk and the plans we have, and if we need to look at it this year or sooner, or you know. So yes, I will take that back, and then we would have a look at the risk.
Is that agreed that we should come back with, you know, a programme in terms of what's happening on the internal audit review of cyber security? Are there any other points that members have on this work programme? Are people with that further action, are people happy to note this report then? Thank you very much, Vivian. Now, Vivian, I see that you're up again. It's your night, isn't it? Damon's sitting quietly there, and Kevin. And Hitesh has left us. So we're over to you again, I think, for the Internal Audit Charter 25-26, which we all need to read and understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the Internal Audit Charter is another mandatory requirement under the global standards. This is produced every year by internal audit teams. The standards this year sets out details that must be included. So the charter we have is a more detailed version of what we had in previous years. The few headings I'd highlight from what we've got is, and these are like new headings that have been introduced due to the global standard, is the purpose of internal auditing. And another area is the internal audit mandate and authority, and quality assurance and improvement program. Generally, as an internal audit function, we have to also confirm that we are committed to adhering to the standards in the services that we provide. So yeah, happy to take questions on this one as well.
Any questions on the audit charter? No. I think, Vivian, it would be useful for us to have some training on the audit charter. And certainly it'd be useful for me. I assume other members would welcome it as well, and we should, you know. So I don't know, we've got a meeting in July, haven't we? I wonder whether we can talk offline maybe about a suitable time to do some training, whether we do it online or whether we do it before the next meeting. I think some members struggle with coming earlier to do training. Is that right? So we might look at another time to do it online, because it's probably not suitable to do it after the meeting, because it might be getting late. But we can liaise about a good time to do some online training on the audit charter. for all the members and any other councillors that are interested. Actually, I think that would be useful. Right. So members are happy to note the audit charter. With that, that ends the meeting. I'm just going to say, as he's left, that this was Hitesh's last meeting. He's been sort of the assistant director, is that right? Assistant director? Interim assistant director of finance, or interim assistant director of finance and deputy section 151 officer. And they're very much in demand, section 151 officers. But his period as interim assistant director has come to an end. We all thank him for his professionalism and contribution to the authority and to this committee, and wish him well in the future. I think he's going to watch some cricket, what he told me. A bit of a cricket fan. We look forward to hearing what arrangements there are to ensure we have the right professional support for Damon going forward and for the team.